So welcome to our group today, and I'm very happy to introduce you, Ewoudt, our coach, Ewoudt, from South Africa. And you are introducing a very interesting book, a very challenging book, I would say, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And you are introducing what was the learning from you and what was the what did you gain from this book in relation to your development of the coaching competencies? So please go ahead.
Thanks for the intro, and thanks for joining everyone. It's actually so fun to do this. I was thinking about this, reflecting, because I actually present for a life in my full-time job. So it's quite interesting to now be on this side and presenting in one of these sessions. So thank you so much for your time. Before I jump in, just a little bit of a summary. So Christina's already introduced the book of Charles Duhigg. It's all about habits and habit formation. And really, what was interesting about the book, it's quite scientific, like Christina said. So it's quite a complicated book because it starts with a lot of kind of like psychology and the science of habit formation. And then it kind of goes into how does one apply that in daily life. And really what it's about, you know, and I see it's interesting, if I even look at the wording used in the book, they say it's about breaking bad habits, what they call bad habits, and creating positive change. But I think even if we apply that to, you know, what we learn in coaching about the ICF methodology, it's not about, you know, necessarily something being bad or positive. It's about that change to something that's desired. So I think in the context of coaching, you could even reframe that a bit to say it's about what is the habit that you want to change, or what is the desired outcome that you want from your habits. I think something that was really interesting for me back when I started my book presentation, preparing for it, the reason why I was interested about this book is that habits is something that's always been really interesting to me personally. Like I am a very, I mean, you guys don't know me personally, but I'm a very structured, detailed orientated person. And habits is a big thing for me personally in life. Like I structure a lot of my life around habits, around specific positive habits. So I was very, very interested to learn more about habit formation and how it works. So that was kind of my personal introduction to the topic. But that's kind of just an overview. Let's start talking then about actually what's discussed in the book and how it relates back to the world of coaching, which I think is really the interesting thing here. So one of the big topics in the book is this concept of the habit loop, which is very, very simple. But what basically the author is saying that a habit consists of three different components: a cue, a routine, and then from actioning that routine, there is a reward. That's really how if you break it down into its simplest forms, that is what every habit is about. So it's about the cue, it's about that cue that then triggers a routine, and then that cascades into a reward. And even just that as a starting point is quite powerful, because if you think about coaching and if you reflect as a coach, or even where you've been a coach, a lot of times a client is coming to a coach with a desire around potentially changing a certain habit, or it's focused on, maybe they don't even know that it is a habit. You know, maybe they don't have at that stage the awareness that it is a habit. But a lot of times we are in this space of habit formation, right? Whether it's changing a habit or being more aware of it. But a lot of times conversations and discussions that are had with clients is in this space. And for me, that speaks very closely to competency-free of our markers around establishing and maintaining agreement. Because as you kind of go through that agreement setting phase, it's important, and this is something that Christina's also helped me a lot with, it's about sitting with that agreement setting phase. It's really exploring it and getting to the crux of, you know, what is really a smart and a good tangible goal that we can work with in a session. So for me, if I'm applying this back to coaching, it's about, if there is a habit here that's part of the discussion, it's about making sure that you sit with the client to really understand, you know, what exactly around this habit, what is your current opinion, what is really the thing around this habit, but what is the value, very importantly, because we need to define that value. What is the value of you changing this habit, or looking at this habit in a new way? Because if we haven't defined that actual core value and what it means for the client, then we haven't, completed the agreement setting phase adequately. So I think that's already quite a nice, interesting thing. The book obviously then, like I said, goes into a lot of detail around the neurology of habits and how habits, and this is the thing, when you start unpacking it, you don't realize how a lot of what we do is actually habits. You might not identify those things as habits, but a big part of what we do on a day-to-day life and even how we respond to situations is actually linked to a habit, that cue, routine, reward loop. And because of that, it's a really interesting topic for coaching, because it's definitely in that space where we traverse as coaches, around looking at clients' blind spots, or them becoming more aware of their blind spots, that journey of self-discovery. Because a lot of times this is an unconscious thing, that actually just having that discussion with yourself, you can reveal more habits and become more aware of habits. So for me, this all speaks very closely to active listening. As the coach, you need to really apply that active listening skills, make sure that you're really listening to the client and that you're responding to what the client is sharing in the session, so that you can, help them explore that in the right amount of detail. And then once again, obviously, we want to evoke awareness in the client. So if we could get them to a space where they can, come to new awareness around habits, or what habits mean to their life, and what habits they want to potentially look and change, there's a lot of potential power in this for the client. Another interesting topic, and the book goes into this in a lot more detail, is this idea of keystone habits. A keystone habit is really just almost like a pivotal behavior that someone enacts with, and it actually sets off a bit of a chain reaction. So what that means is, if you as a person can identify your keystone habits, that's actually where the most powerful change, on a psychological level lies. Because if you can actually figure out what habit is leading to other habits, and you can identify and address, or, change that habit, you can actually enact massive, improvement and change in your life. So the book actually goes into that topic a lot more. What this kind of made me think about when it comes to the coaching process is that it speaks to me about that element of curiosity, about if as coaches we are always curious to learn more about a client, and we're maintaining that presence, we could actually get into the session, and as we start delving deeper into the session, it could actually be very possible to identify one of those keystone habits, and that could really, enable the client, enable massive self-discovery and change for the client. So I thought that could be quite an interesting thing just to reflect on as well. Okay, so then the book obviously goes into a little bit more of practical territory, because now we kind of understand what habits are, the fact that they kind of like, a lot of it happens subconsciously, but how do you actually change a habit? So the book goes into this in detail and has quite a few nice case studies about how habit can be changed. But the key thing that it comes down to in very simple language is that you need to alter the routine while preserving the cue and reward. So basically, if the client has a habit that they actually want to change, where there's a clear desire and clear purpose around, I think I can actually change this habit and I should change this habit, what the client kind of needs to do is alter a specific routine, but keeping the cue and the reward. So basically cheating the brain a little bit, so that you still get the cue, you still get the reward, but the actual routine is changed. So look, obviously a lot of that goes into psychology. So that's not the type of thing that we would work on in a coaching session. But I think it is something interesting just to keep in mind or reflect on during the final part of a coaching session. So when you're busy with the action planning and the client is developing, what am I doing post the session and what does this mean for my day-to-day? I think it's important that you also realize that habit change is not an easy thing. If it, especially a keystone habit that you want to change, it's something that's entrenched in you. So the action planning phase of a coaching session is so vital, because that's where the client, commits to themselves around, this is what I'm going to be doing. This is what this means in my day-to-day life. So it also just once again signifies for me the importance of facilitating client growth and how important that action plan process is, so that the client can reflect on what do I physically need to do to get me where I need to be. So I thought that would be an interesting thing to mention. And this for me is so lovely because it's something that in a coaching session that I focus on a lot, is the power of small wins. So what the book also talks a lot about is that, you know, the process of habit formation and changing habits is complicated. It is not something that changes in one day, and there's a lot of work that goes in that. Hard on yourself, but also recognize the small wins, you know, the small little pockets of progression towards this new desired state that you're moving to. And I think, once again, such a lovely link with the coaching process, right? Where if we think about competency 4, where we need to cultivate trust and safety, the coach's acknowledgement of the client's work in a coaching session, of becoming more aware of their habits or whatever it is, that can be an extremely powerful thing. And I think especially if we're dealing here, you know, around the world of habit formation, the coach acknowledging that growth and that awareness of the client, I think is really something that can be very powerful within this broader journey. Also, like I said, once you've even changed behavior or changed a habit, it's also not that hard, that easy to maintain that change, right? Because we're human beings. The kind of key line here from the book is motivation wanes, but habits can support you through times of lower inspiration. And that's the real power of habits. If something has become a habit, what it actually means is psychologically, it becomes less effort. So it becomes your new default. So if you can get yourself in a space where a certain behavior becomes a habit, you have won half of the fight, right? Talking from a kind of like psychology perspective. But when it comes to the coaching process, there's a really interesting link here around the coach helping identify the client, what resources they have to maintain these good habits. And that is so important for new habit formation, is to really reflect and think about, what are these habits and what am I going to do? And when motivation is low, who and what can support me during those times? So especially, you know, at the end of a coaching session, when we're busy with, you know, thinking about the action plan, and we talk to the client about, you know, what resources you have, a very interesting resource is obviously internal willpower. You know, are you going to rely on your internal willpower? But even when internal willpower wanes, what else is there? You know, what is your support base in your life that can potentially support you? So I thought that's quite a really nice link with what we do in the coaching world. So then moving on, talking, I think, a little bit more broadly. So those were kind of, you know, linking the coaching process to specific elements mentioned in the book. There's also quite a few interesting things around, if you think about coaching, general, the process of coaching, how that supports the process of new habit formation. So I think some of the things that I've really been reflecting on, the first one is it provides time away from habits to reflect. And this is such a powerful thing that I think we need to, you know, remind ourselves of. When a client is sitting with you and you and the client are there immersed and completely active and present in a coaching session, everything else fades in the background. You know, the habits that you might be obsessing over before the session, all of that wanes away because we are now focused in this moment. So coaching in itself, even just on a very simple but on a very powerful level, provides you space, provides the client time away to really reflect on those habits and maybe look at them from a different angle. So that by itself is very powerful. Obviously, we've spoken about this already, but it can allow you to potentially become more aware and self-empowered to change habits. I think that's the whole power of the coaching process, right? The way we approach coaching is that it leads to a sense of self-empowered, that the client gets to that realization that I actually have the power to make this change. And when it comes to, you know, actually maintaining good habits, if I'm feeling self-empowered about that change, the chances that that will stick is so much higher. So I think that's also why it's, you know, coaching is such a lovely support basis for this type of client goal. And then, yeah, once again, it allows for ownership in terms of habit change. So linking to what I've said now, but even bigger than that, you are owning your journey. It's not about the coach doing this. It's not about anyone else doing this. You are taking complete ownership as the client around this change. So really kind of owning the whole process, which is really powerful. Okay, and then also just some key learnings, kind of for me also on a personal level, around my journey with coaching and, you know, refining my skills as a coach. Some of the key things that came for me from the book. So firstly, a coachable goal cannot be to remove a habit. So this is also a thing that I've been exploring a lot about, is how you phrase and how you contextualize a goal. But I think the key thing is, and also the discussions that we want to have with clients, we want them to be positive in nature. So it's not about saying this thing is bad or this thing is negative, but what is the desired change that you want to bring, and what does that change mean to you? What is the value of that change? So that's quite a powerful thing. It also made me reflect a lot about the power of mirroring. But I think also what I've also learned over the last few weeks, especially, is that mirroring, it's something you need to use strategically. You can't use it all the time. But when you use strategically, it is a very powerful tool in a coaching session to potentially make a client more aware of habits. So as you know, there's that internal narrative of the client, and you as a coach pick up some interesting points, mirroring some of those points and playing that back to the client can be a very powerful tool to just build some of that awareness around habits. And once again, because habits are a lot of times subconscious, it takes that moment for that mirror to be held up to your face to potentially even become aware that that's what we're dealing with. And I spoke about this a little bit in the beginning, but such a powerful thing for me is that it also speaks to how you shouldn't rush the agreement setting process. The agreement setting process is so vital because it sets the scene for the rest of the coaching session. So in the context of habits and habit formation, allow the client the space, the time to really explore those habits and understand what they are, but also, like I said, once again, what they mean for them. What is the meaning of changing them, and how does the client really relate to them? I think that is such a powerful thing when we're doing our coaching sessions. And then also just a few notes around how, you know, some of these points relate to coaching ethics. I think, once again, confidentiality is obviously a very big thing in coaching. So it's very important that we always respect the client's confidentiality, you know, when they share anything. But in the context of this book, they might be sharing, you know, information about habits that might be slightly embarrassing, that might be very personal. It's very important that we are confidential in that space, and we create that sense of psychological safety that is so important. And that's where the second point comes in. It's really about promoting inclusivity and embracing and accepting the clients and their habits with an open and understanding attitude. Because I think if you don't create that safety, that trust and safety in a session, it's going to definitely limit the ability of the client to explore that habit and what it means to them. And if, very importantly, this is a big thing, because habit formation, we saw this in the book as well, there's a strong psychological element to this. And a lot of times habit formations and the changing of habits could also speak to, psychological issues that need to be addressed. So I think it's very important, once again, as our responsibility as a coach, if you identify that maybe there is also support here or a journey that a psychologist could help the client around this habit formation. Let's say, for example, around addiction or something like that, then it is obviously very important that you do that referral, and then take the necessary measures from there in terms of the process that you would follow. And then just in terms of summary, so I think the nice thing about the book, habits formation is quite a complicated topic, and it can get quite scientific and also quite intense. But I think one of the key things that the book kind of lands at the end is that habits aren't destiny, but they are powerful. So the key message of the book is that understand that power. Don't be afraid of your habits. but you use them to your advantage, basically. And see, your habits and how you change and relate to your habits as part of the human condition. And for me, I think that's such a beautiful thing with what we talk about, the coaching approach. The coaching mindset is all about ongoing learning and improvement. And a big part of that first step is awareness. You can't learn and improve if you're not aware of those aspects where you can improve. So it leaves on a very positive note to say, as you also become more aware of your habits, you might get to that point like, oh my goodness, I've got all of these habits I want to change. That is the first step. Embrace the unknown, embrace that uncertainty. And that links so beautifully with the coaching mindset that we also need to embody. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ewoudt. Thank you for taking us in this journey of these, let's say, short presentation, but very effective and very full of a lot of reflection, a lot of hints and insights. So thank you for presenting this material. And I'm going to stop the recording now so that we can open our conversation and more sharing on what you have done. I just would like to you to share what was the value for you in working at these activity. I mean, what did you learn by creating or going through the process of creating this presentation?
Yeah, Christina, I think I spoke to you about this a little bit as well. What was interesting for me about this book presentation, I did an initial draft of the book presentation very early on in my journey, because that's also a typical thing. And we've discussed this Ewoudt thing. It's like, let's do as much as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
exactly. Slow down. But it was so interesting when we kind of re-engaged on this, and I looked at the book presentation again. It was so interesting to see how my perspective changed completely from when I initially did my initial draft. And then I had all the benefit of all of the learnings, all of the coaching sessions that I've had, the one-on-one sessions, the group sessions. And it was actually really powerful to see how my whole opinion, my whole perspective of not just the book, but also it showed me really how my perspective of coaching changed over that time. Because I also suddenly I could kind of verbalize things that I think at the beginning of the process was very hard to kind of even, verbalize and say, this is how I feel and this is how it is. But I think the one thing that it left me with was more of a sense of confidence, to be honest. Like I think doing this and being able to apply it to something else, what I've learned around coaching, left me with quite a bit of confidence that, this is something real now. If I can, actually talk about coaching in a presentation and I can put my thoughts down like this, I think it's become like a really powerful motivator for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Ewoudt. And we can see that, and you can see that reflecting in your coaching practice. So this is how you lead yourself towards your full certification. So thank you and congratulations.